Okay, so in this video, we're gonna set up this charge up and release effect. It actually consists of three separate elements. So we have the sort of charging up with energy particles. There are some new modules and techniques that we will cover here. Then we have the explosion, again, particles emitting smoke. And we also have these little embers flying around. So we're gonna do three different particle setups. Let's jump right into it. This is where we left off last time. So once again, I'll just go under my levels and make a new level, make it an empty basic one. Again, file, save current level as, and let's name it level underscore 04 underscore charge up. So just to make it more interesting, I have this, character animation from Mixamo as usual. So it's just this character charging up with energy, and then she spreads her arms, and that's when the explosion happens. If you want to use the same one, then on Mixamo it's called the standing magic area attack. So as usual, I want to get rid of this nasty bright lighting, so we can just make a new light spotlight, put it above our character, and just delete the directional light. So we just have something easier on the eyes, something like this. And let's go to our VFX folder, right click, Niagara system, empty system, call it ns underscore charge up, double click. We need to make a new emitter. Let's make it an empty emitter, F2, and just call it emitter underscore charge up. So again, we need to spawn some particles, create a new spawn rate, and let's give birth to maybe 500 particles. Again, initialize particle, let's give them a lifetime of maybe 4 seconds, and the size mode, uniform, give them a size of maybe 3. So now we need to somehow spread these particles around our character. Really, when you look at what's happening, they're being born sort of in a spherical shape around the character, and then they travel inwards. So we need to give birth to the particles on top of a sphere. We haven't done this yet, but there is a module called location. So if you just scroll down, you have these location modules, and you can select shape location. In other software, this might be called birth position or object position. You're simply giving birth to particles on top of or inside of an object. So it's already set to sphere. So the particles are randomly being born inside of a sphere, but we need them to be born sort of more to the edges of the sphere. And that's what this surface distribution is for. If I drag it all the way to 1, the particles are only born on the absolute edge of the sphere. And the more I go towards 0, the closer to the center of the sphere the particles go. So I think I'll set it to something like 0.8. And now we just need to tell the particles to travel toward the center. So we need to go to the particle update group now, right? Because we're talking about what happens to the particles across their lifetime. So after they're born, I need them to travel toward the middle over time. So that's why I'm in the particle update group. Click on that, and we're just gonna type force. And let's use the point attraction force. As usual, it will give us the warning that it wants that solve forces and velocity module. So just click fix issue. And it pretty much works by default. The particles are automatically being attracted to the origin of our scene, which is the 0, 0, 0 on X, Y, and Z. So I think they could be traveling faster, so we can increase the attraction strength to maybe 10. And now they need to die sooner, right? Because they sort of overshoot. So let's go to initialize particle and set their lifetime to just 2 seconds. Now we need to go into our scene and see how big the sphere actually is. So just drag your NS charge up into the scene, move it up. And yeah, so the sphere is too small for our effect right now. So we can just go to shape location, sphere radius, and let's set that to maybe 250. That might be too big, so let's just do 200. And now what's happening is the attraction force is not reaching far enough because the attraction radius is only 100, but our sphere has a radius of 200. So we need to set the attraction radius to above 200. So I'll just do 250. And now the particles are nicely attracted to the middle. Now they still are alive for too long, so I'll just set their lifetime to 1. That's too soon, so let's try 1.5. Perfect, right? So they just about reach the middle before they die. And if you look at what it looks like in our scene, we're already pretty close to what we want. What I don't like right now is that they just pop into place at full size and they die at full size. I would like them to scale up and then scale down toward the end of their life. If you recall, we did this in the introductory chapter. If you don't remember, no worries. Again, we need to go to the particle update and let's search for scale. And we want to scale sprite size, right? So right now what's happening is they begin invisible and then they slowly get bigger toward the end of their life. We actually want them to start invisible and end invisible and only have their full size in the middle. So I will grab the last point here and just set it to 0 value. So now there's no particles at all. And I'll make a new point. So right click, add key, and this key I want to be at full size, which means a value of 1. If you're confused by how this works, it's probably because you skipped the introductory chapter, so I would encourage you to go back, right? So this works on the normalized age basis, so that 1 is the end of the life of the particles, 0 is the beginning of the life of the particles, irrespective of how many seconds they are alive for. So we can just right click on these points and say auto, or you can just select them and then hit 1 on the keyboard. That's the shortcut here to make it a smooth keyframe. So I'll just select this one and make them all smooth. And so now, as you can see, they beautifully get big and then they get small as they die. So this is definitely not bad, but we can still improve it further by randomizing a lot of these values. So first we can randomize the size even further. So we can do is go to the initialized particle, and here we have the sprite size. So let's make it random range float like we learned before and set it to just 1.5 to maybe 3. So now the particles have random sizes. We can also give them a random lifetime. So again, random range float, set it from 1 to 1.5. So some of them die sooner. And also some of them could move faster and slower. So point attraction force, attraction strength, set it to random range float. And maybe we can go from like 8 till 15. So some of the particles are faster than others. Now what we can do to improve this even further is play with the color, right? We haven't done that yet. So initialized particle, we have the color mode. It's set to unset. We can set it to either direct set, which means you just set one solid color for all the particles, or we can give them a range. So I can set it to a random range of colors, and then I can pick 2 different colors. So maybe we could do, pink and blue. And now the particles will have a random color between this range. So let's see what it looks like in our scene. And it's looking good. The only thing that it's missing is some glow, right? We need these particles to be brighter, to look more magical. So for that, we need to modify the material. So the material of the particles is controlled with this default sprite material. Now, we don't want to modify this default material, right? Because that's just something that comes with Unreal Engine and you don't really want to mess with that. Instead, we want to make a copy. So I'll just click on this browse to find it in my content browser. And I want to just drag it into my materials folder in my Redefine FX folder and just say copy here. So now I have a copy of it. Let's just do F2 and name it our m_sprite_emissive. Let's double click to open that material. Right, so there's a few things going on, but all we really care about is the emissive color, and we need to boost it somehow. And the way you boost something in the Unreal Engine material editor is usually with the multiply node. So I'll just hold Alt and click to disconnect this, and then I'll drag from this lerp node and just search for multiply. Just make a new multiply node and connect that to our emissive. And now you can see that the B value, in other words, what it's being multiplied by, is set to 1. If I set this to 100, I am multiplying the emissive color by 100 and I'm getting some glowing particle happening here. So I can just save that. And now I'll just go back to my Niagara system here, click on this material and just search for my M underscore sprite underscore emissive. Here it is. Double click. And now if I go back to my level, you can see that my particles are beautifully emissive. It's already working. And if this isn't emissive enough for you, you can go back into the material at any time and just change this to maybe 200 emissive value, save, let it compile, and here you go. It's glowing much more. All right, so if you're following along, you should be looking at something like this right now. I would say we are 95% there. The one remaining thing we have to do is initialize the effect and then end it, right? Because right now the particles are just gonna continue emitting infinitely, and we only need that one sort of a charge up event, and then they get sucked into her and it stops. So let's go back into the Niagara system, and we know we're gonna be dealing with the spawn rate. We need to somehow tell the system to stop spawning these particles after a certain amount of time. So let's just click on this arrow next to spawn rate. There are different ways you could go about this, but we will choose the float from curve, right? So we are already familiar with how this curve works. We've done it with the scale. We are simply controlling how many particles are being emitted over the course of their lifetime. So if I scale the curve to 500, what will happen is, if I extend my timeline over here, 500 particles are being emitted at the beginning, and then slowly there's less and less particles being emitted over time. Now the scene keeps looping. That's why new particles are showing up over and over again. So let's go to the system update, like we learned in the previous video how this menu works. And the loop behavior, we only want it to happen once. So now what's going to happen is all the particles will show up and then they will die off, just like that. Now, if I wanted even more particles, we can set the scale curve to maybe 750 and get even more particles this way. But if I go back into my system, select the system and just auto activate, start, particles show up, she gets charged up with energy, and then the particles gradually disappear. Okay, so I feel like it's lasting too long, right? I really want her to get charged up quicker. So this is controlled with just the length of the loop. So if we go into the system update, we have the loop duration. If I set it to 1 second, it all happens very quickly. So I'll just set it to maybe 3 seconds instead of 5. And again, watch what that looks like. Start. Even that may be a bit too long. So I think final decision, I'll just do 2.5 seconds. And I feel like the particles could be faster. So attraction force, I'll do minimum 10 and maximum maybe 18. And let's make sure that the particles then die sooner. So lifetime, I'll do 0.8 and maximum of 1.3 maybe. And if you wanted the particles to remain emitting at a higher rate, because toward the end there's only a few particles being emitted, right? That's because of this curve gradually going down. We can just make a new point here or a new key and just raise this up. So now what's going to happen is we are emitting the maximum amount of particles for a longer time before they drop off. So it's sort of a fuller sphere. There's more particles overall, which I think looks nicer. And if we wanted them to be even brighter, we can just make them just slightly bigger. So initialized particle size, I think I'll just do maybe 2 to 3. And now some of them are bigger and they just are more visible. All right, so this will be the end of this lesson. It got pretty long, but I covered a lot of stuff for you guys. Really try to show you so many of the different things that you can do here. I really hope that the difference between emitter update, particle spawn, and particle update is clear now as to where you go to change what settings. We've covered the point attraction force, scaling the particles down over time, shape location, right, giving birth to particles on top of a shape. We have some spawn rate dropping off over time, We went over the looping and how to only have it happen once. We covered the material and how to make a glowing material. We added random range floats to a lot of these values to randomize it. Again, if this seems like a lot all at once, it's absolutely understandable. It really takes some time to get to know all of these different things that you can do in all of these settings. So look at it as more just like an initial overview, like you're just getting an idea of all the different things that you can do. And over time, as we set up more and more effects together, all of this will really become much easier for you, and you will know exactly, which module to select and where to go to get the kind of effect that you're after. So this will be it for this lesson, and we will continue this setup in the next video.